welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. My name is Chris Ringler. This is my little podcast. Thanks for coming. If you want to know more about me and what I do and what I write and all that stuff, you can find everything, and maybe you even found this little podcast on spookychris.com. I am a writer. I made a couple short films, and a couple micro short films. I am an event coordinator, once in a while artist, podcaster, and full-time weirdo. I thank you for coming. This is usually a micro podcast where I just kind of talk about my thoughts and the world and my writing and art stuff and all that good thing. Megillah. I wanted this time maybe to go in a different direction. So for anybody that has known me, followed me, as if I have followers. If I do the dishes, because there's a couple things in there that could really use cleaning that I don't want to do. For anyone that cares, I was born in Flint, Michigan. Now, being born in a city is not a big deal. I'm from a small town, and, you got to go to the city to have a kid, generally speaking. At least back then. Back then it was Hurley Hospital, McLaren Hospital, and I believe St. Joseph's Hospital. This would have been in 1974. So there are options, but they're all in Flint. So I was born in Flint. I moved to Flint in 2000 and, let me think, 5, I believe. I was living, so my first apartment was in a small city named Mount Morris. And it was the first apartment I looked at, and I looked at it on a Wednesday, and I moved out on a Sunday, like the same Sunday. I was out. I was 27 and never thought I could afford to move out, and then just kind of had something in my life say, you should move out, and I was shocked to see I could. So I was living in Mount Morris. Someone I knew who owned an apartment building kind of shamed me into checking his apartment that was for rent out, because he was making fun of me for living in Mount Morris, because it's a super kind of backwoods kind of country city. And so I checked the place out, and it was, it still had somebody in it, and it was going to be a minute till he moved out. But I had a friend that lived there. I knew another person that lived there, and it was in Flint, and I was just starting to get involved in the Flint art scene. And I was like, okay, cool. So I moved to Flint in 2005, lived in the apartment until 2012 when my wife and I got I got a house, and my wife, then girlfriend, moved in when we got married. So we've been here in the house since 2012. So I've lived in Flint since 2005. So I love Flint. Love it enough to be frustrated and to have it drive me crazy a lot, as all things that you love do. But I wanted to take a minute to talk about Flint, kind of a welcome to Flint. Most people have heard of Flint, Michigan for one of several reasons. Lately, the Flint water crisis, and we went through the Flint water crisis. It's still kind of a very alive ghost. I can speak personally. We never drank the Flint water. Used it to cook and stuff, and still do. Just because there's a point where you can't really. It's too much cost to try to do everything with bottled water. It's just too much. We had a dog at the time, 2 dogs now, but I had a dog at the time, and he drank the water. We bathed in it. We cooked with it. We never drank it, but once everything happened, we, like everybody else, would go and get in line and get our bottled water for free, and that was so crazy for a few months. So we'll never trust the water system, just like we'll never trust the elected officials that tell us the water system's good. Is it good? Probably about as good as it's going to get. But that's the kind of trust that once it's broken, I don't know if you can fix it. So we still, we get bottled water every time our dogs are on bottled water. we are trying to be as safe as possible, as much as we can. So people know Flint from that. They know it from the Flint water crisis. They also know it from GM. General Motors started here. We're not the motor city. We're the vehicle city because motorized carriages kind of popped up here, and that's kind of was the birth of the automobile and blah blah blah. So they know it from GM, and because of that, they know us from Michael Moore, who technically isn't from Flint. He's from a small city nearby named Davison, so he's not a Flint guy. He definitely operated in Flint, but he's not from here, much like I'm not from Flint. It's kind of like everybody will say they're from the big city nearby, because I guess it sounds cooler than being from the small town. Whatever. And I'm sure, you may know Flint from Clarissa Shields, the women's boxing champ. You could know from the Durrell brothers, who were boxing champs. There's several sports players. We've had several sports folks. The Flintstones, who played for MSU, Michigan State University, who were basketball players. They were from a bunch of them were from Flint. Flint's been at one time was known for its sports. Now we're down to one high school. In a few kind of middle school, elementary, so I don't know how that will affect kids playing sports these days. I don't know. We'll see. But so for a lot of folks, they either have kind of pity or indifference or kind of almost a frustration with when they hear the city of about Flint. I remember when the water crisis was going on and how people outside of our area, even in our county, got very tired of hearing about it and hearing people talk about how scared they were and how hard this was and all those things. They were because they didn't understand it, and that's one of the things that I don't want to dwell on the negative, because this is not about that. But I think it's easy to, if you don't live it, to mischaracterize things like that, tragedies, traumas, all of that, because it's not yours and you don't have to carry it. Right now, as I record this, Texas is going through a horror with the weather and the power issues and everything associated with that. And for some, it's easy to pass judgment on people and all that, and even make light, because we Northerners like to think we're hardy folks that, oh gosh, you don't even know winter, which I live in it's called Genesee County in mid-Michigan, and we just got, I don't know, close to a foot of snow this week. And it was rough, it was bad, but we don't get like Wisconsin winters, Minnesota. We don't get, like, you have to go further north in the state or to the edges, near the Great Lakes. So where we're at is kind of a valley, so we don't get it as bad as others. But, a lot of us Northerners like to poke fun at the South and like, oh gosh, you can't even drive through an inch of snow. You know what? A lot of us can't either. Like, believe me, I see people who drive like they are rolling on magic tires, and they're just begging for an accident, it would seem. So it's one of those things. It's easy to discount people's terror and trauma and what they're going through if it's not yours. So as I say, much like some idiots, horrible people are doing that with Texas, not understanding the real terror and horror, much like people are doing it with COVID, thinking it's no big deal, or it's just like the flu, or it's a fun gag. People did that with Flint water. So you get a lot of, like I say, pity, indifference, aggression. But I wanted to talk about, and again, it's not at all what I would want to do, is set the plate. But, I mean, you got to kind of admit what things are before you get beyond it. And the thing is this. Flint, it has all of this stuff. It has all this trauma. There was, and there's a Netflix miniseries called Flint, and it's about all of the crime. When we have had some hella crime. We're a city. People forget that we're a city. We're under 100,000 people now, but they forget that cities have crime. Why? Because there's tons of people, and because there's more reporting about the crime in a city than in a small town. Like, you're not going to see a whole lot of reporting because it doesn't behoove them to do that. Like in small town, Michigan, that has rapes and murders and thefts and stuff. It's just, it doesn't, unless they don't have to cop to it, they ain't gonna, because they're not trying to live that life. And they don't have the same crime, but they do have crime, and they do have abuse, and they have it in higher numbers than we think, because we like to think of that those areas as, oh gosh, that's where all the good people go, and the God-fearing people, and they go to the small town, and they're just living their best lives. Well, those small town Christians or whomever, small town folks, are not always the best people at all. So small towns can just hide things better. So, as I say, there's definitely problems. I'm never going to be someone to discount the problems, and there's even the petty problems that I have, where it's just like, oh my gosh, why is XYZ like this? But there is a life outside of that, and that's a thing that I don't know that a lot of people get to see or get to hear about. You'll either get, from folks, you'll either get the, Flint, or you get the oh man, it's the most magical place on earth, and it's just a joy, and there's nothing ever bad, and everything is magical, and it ain't that either. I am a cheerleader for Flint, but I'm a realist as well, and I'm not gonna lie and pretend as if things are 100% awesome when they're not. But I also want to introduce you to the Flint that I know, the Flint that I call home, and Flint I love. So why did I move to Flint? Well, like I say, I moved to Flint in 2005, and there was a burgeoning art scene, and I had just started to become a part of it, and I wanted to be around those people, like-minded people, new friends, and this whole new life. I'm trying to think, I was working in Flint at the time, so it was, closer than where I lived to get there. And in 2005, it was, at that time, the art scene had we've always had an art scene, but it had kind of dried up. There was an art walk, but it was 3 venues, one of which was going to close within a couple of years. And there weren't a lot of visible young people in the art scene. Well, these folks had created a new group to kind of promote bands, because they were all band folks and band people. Well, once they kind of started that, all of the artists, the writers and painters and musicians that weren't necessarily in bands, and poets, and all of us other folks liked the idea of, hey, let's get together and can promote one another. And that led to, why don't we put shows on? So I came to Flint for the art scene. And Flint has a vibrant art scene, one that you don't hear about a lot. And again, you're talking, there are poetry groups. There are, and I know so many writers in Flint, and name a genre, and we have them. Because of who I am and what I'm into, I know a lot of horror writers that are in Flint and in the greater Flint area. I also know a lot of poets and experimental authors, just straight fiction writers, mystery writers. There's a lot of self-help and religious writing. And it was cool. I worked at a bookstore, and we worked a lot with upcoming authors. That was one of the places I worked, through all these many years I've been in Flint. And while I am sorry that she didn't really fully utilize the assets she had, the owner, it was pretty cool. We would set up author readings and stuff, and events, and I got to set up some of those with friends from out of the area, where we'd set up readings and signings, and and it was great. The downtown area at the time had a lot of open property, and people were so desperate to kind of get things going. They were very, very open-minded to the idea of, hey, like, let's set up. Well, we'd love to have you set up a music show, an art show, a poetry show. So we did author readings, we did band nights, we did signings, art shows. Where I lived, we had the whole first floor was open. So we were all friends with our landlord, and at the time, like, there were, I'm trying to think, it started with three of us that were friendly. At one point, we had the whole place. It was four of us, all four apartments that were all friends. But we had open space on the first floor, and we started doing these guerrilla art shows, which are basically, we had connections to the Detroit art scene and to the Flint art scene, and we'd have them all come out and put these art shows on during Art Walk. We're part of what helped expand this Art Walk, so that now Flint has a truly incredible Art Walk in the warmer months. There's an indie arts group. There was the arts group I was a part of. Bands will set up. People will go out on the street and do art. They'll play music on the street. They'll set up kind of in some open spaces. There's a couple galleries that are open that will have rotating shows. There's a bar that one of the arts groups sets up in. There's a newer kind of used bookstore that has joined it recently, and they'll have art shows. And some of the bars or restaurants will, have someone new each month set art up in them. And it is really great. Like in the warmer months in Flint, you will get, probably at least a couple hundred people going through town, and it's incredible to see all these people, these faces that you don't see every day, to hear laughter, to see people going to restaurants, getting drinks, once in a while buying art. P.S. People don't buy enough art from local artists, just saying. And it is an incredible atmosphere. It's an incredible vibe. When you hear about Flint, when you see Flint, people don't think about that. They think of like, oh, crime and terrible things. This is all. It's so beautiful, and it's such a great feeling and a great atmosphere. And other cities have art walks, and I get it and I know it, but I don't know if there's anybody that can compete with the talent, the passion, and the supportiveness of what we have. Because again, like when I'm not directly involved in that anymore. Like I'm doing my convention stuff and just those kind of events. But we would work with artists all the time to try to get shows with them. We still do an art show once in a while when it's not COVID. And it's great. It's amazing. It's a great feeling to try to get these folks who don't have opportunities otherwise, and to get them and get their art in front of people. I mean, it means the world. Just like when I've sold books to strangers. That's my point. That's why I write, is not to write for my friends to buy my stuff. It's to a stranger who has no investment in me buys a book. Because they don't want to waste their money. They want something that is good, that is going to engage them. And that's my hope always as a writer. So we have this incredible art scene. Well, the biggest event in Flint every year is Back to the Bricks, which is a classic car show that they have it for a week, where it's a lot of cruises and a drive-in movie night and all kinds. But like the event itself, there's a cruise, like a big cruise on a Friday, and you'll see, Friday or Thursday. So once in a while they'll do a couple days of cruising. I'm thinking of where I work, and then we'll do an event during the one of the nights of the cruise. And you'll see thousands of cars lined up on Saginaw Street is our main drag, and you can actually technically take Saginaw Street. It turns into other roads. It turns into Dixie Highway, and you can take that technically up to the north to Mackinac or down south to Florida, which is crazy. But that drag, thousands of cars, and the event is classic cars, but they're starting to allow, like especially the cruise, anybody can kind of join. And again, the atmosphere is incredible. But the big show is the Back to the Bricks car show. And I don't know how it will look post-COVID. It's hard to say. But in the heyday, you'd see, I don't even know, 5,000 cars, 10,000. I mean, I can't know. Like literally the downtown of Flint. So about a mile in length and about a quarter mile in width of classic cars everywhere. And nearly half a million people coming because it's a free event. And it's just incredible. It's incredible. It's to see all of these cars, to see all of these people that like, we'll talk trash about Flint all day long, but we'll come for this because you can't see this anywhere else. And we became one of the bigger car shows in the country. And it really is incredible. I've worked the event a few years with old jobs, and it's something to see. All of these cars and all of these people. And again, like getting pictures, it's insane because you think of Flint, and when I moved to Flint in 2005, the front of the building I moved in was boarded up. There were so many like buildings that were abandoned and empty, and it's not that way anymore. Like most of downtown is full. We have restaurants and all this stuff going on, and to see all the people here, it's incredible. I'm anxious for Back to the Bricks to return because now that we have the Capitol Theater open, the Capitol Theater is an old-fashioned theater. It's an Italian look, and they refurbished it about 3 years ago, and it's absolutely stunning. I've seen the band Styx there. I saw Mystery Science Theater live there. I've seen some other shows there, but it's a gorgeous space, and it truly, like, I can't wait until we get to a place where they can, because the plan is to regularly have events and concerts, and they were just starting to get into that as COVID hit. So I look forward to that, because that's going to be a huge influx of people, and just like the idea that we'll have this living, breathing theater again. I used to go to that place. I met my first girlfriend there when I was 18. When I was 20. I'm sorry, when I was 20. And it was just, so the Capitol it kind of got run down and abandoned, and then they started using it for hall shows and concerts, and I would go to hall shows all the time there. And I went to a few concerts. I don't know who listens and who would care, but like I saw the band Temple Tour there. I saw the band Sacred Reich there. I saw Choir there. It's funny, Typo Negative played The Lobby very, very frustratedly there. But unfortunately I missed it because I was in Detroit seeing Liz Phair. But there's been big shows there, like big shows at the Capitol, and it has a lot of history. And I can't wait to see it living and breathing, and with regular concerts and regular shows. And like I say, they were just starting to get to that when everything started to kind of went to heck. And I look forward to that. We have a beautiful farmers market. It was an award-winning farmers market. It's a big space, open. We had another one that was by the river, and it was great because it was by the river. But you couldn't, for anyone in a wheelchair, you couldn't. There's no way you could get through because it was shoulder to shoulder. It was that busy. It was that narrow, and there just wasn't a way to do it. And now it's a beautiful space. A lot more open. They do events there. I do events there with folks from time to time. Our events group does events there in the spring. I've been to comic conventions there, and it's a beautiful space, and that's one of the gems of the city. One of the great things about Flint too is we have a cultural center, and it's like its own campus where it's a planetarium, a library, a Natural History Museum / Flint Museum, I'm trying to think, a performance space, like so for music or theater or whatever. Then there's the Flint Institute of Music, which is a music hall for recitals. And what else is there? There's a repertory theater there. Now I'm trying to think if that is everything. I think so. But so all of these are on one campus, so you could literally walk place to place in around the holidays, the winter holidays. They'll have everything open for Christmas, for like a Christmas walk. And you can go check out every place. We have an Institute of Arts. And the Institute of Arts is gorgeous. In all of these facilities, they're actually adding on to the library right now and redoing it. They're redoing the Natural History Museum. They redid the planetarium not that long ago. They did some additions to the Repertory Theater. The big performance space has always been in wonderful condition. So these are just gorgeous buildings. And I remember in an old job, I took AmeriCorps members on a tour of the area, and they were just shocked at how all of those are in one place, easily accessible. None of them are expensive to go to, and they're just beautiful facilities with so much. I mean, gosh, you can spend the better part of a day at the Sloan Museum or the Institute of Arts. There's always shows going on at the planetarium. The library is immense, and they do events there. I've done events there as well. And they're going to have more space for community members. And it's great, again, that they're all in one spot, and it's right near Mott Community College, so it's right next to a college, basically, which is great. We have several colleges, like well-regarded colleges in the area. Just outside of the city, it's lesser Flint, if you will. There are man-made waterfalls called Stepping Stone Falls. Now, once upon a time, this area was, home to all these folks that were in the auto industry and GM and everything. So we had high rollers. Like Flint was one of the high roller cities back in the day because all of these folks with money had lived out here that were in the auto industry. I mean, this was a long time ago. We've definitely been on hard times, as it were. But those days were here. And so they built these waterfalls, and it's gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're on Mott Lake, and there's a couple of them, and it's just a beautiful space to go out there, and you can bike out there, you can take walks, and nearby to that is there's Bluebell Beach, so it's a big community beach, and then there's like an ORV area, which is interesting too, because you forget Flint is this rural area, this big city area, but within like 10 minutes, there's ORV parks, and there's all these crazy things, like camping kind of stuff. And near that same stuff is Crossroads Village. Crossroads Village is this great space where they have been able to get buildings from the 1800s. And refurbish them and move them bit by bit. Like I know they moved, what was it, Opera Hall or something, like something from where near where I grew up in Fenton, Michigan. They moved it to Crossroads Village, and that's what they do. Is they get these buildings and they move them. They have like a sawmill and an apple press, and it's like a forge where they have a blacksmith and they have a theater. And it's great. You can go there, and they have holiday events and stuff. But you can go and just tour the area, and everybody that works there is in period dress, and they put on performances, and it's just a beautiful place to go around and check out all of these things. I remember as a kid, we would go out there to spend a day in a one-room schoolhouse, and that was pretty cool. And again, this isn't Flint; it's near Flint. That's near Genesee Township, but it's within 15 minutes of Flint. So what I'm trying to do is just these are all so many things that people don't know or see in Flint, don't know or care sometimes, and it's a shame because Flint has so much to it that people don't see. I got my friends together and we do our events, and that because we love Flint. There had been art shows and concerts and other kinds of conventions, but there weren't kind of stuff like we were doing, kind of horror centric. And we had the ability and the support to do it here, and it's great. And I don't know if I could have ever done it anywhere else. not with not with the means that we have, but like it's an honor to do that. It's an honor to be in a city that's receptive to these things. Gosh, there's Flint is kind of where Grand Funk Railroad came from. That's the big band. But there's always been a strong music scene here, and we have this all ages punk club called the Flint Local 432, which has been in existence for 25 years, which has been the birthplace of so many bands and places as just a shelter for these kids that were trying to find themselves and find music and to fall in love with both. And it's great because it's no drugs, no alcohol, no smoking, and it's a safe place for kids. And they have branched out into art stuff. We have a maker space in the area that's connected to them. So there's a lot of opportunities for kids to kind of come and, again, to find themselves and to find the world and to kind of start getting themselves out there. Like, when I started hanging out downtown, I hung out at the Capitol and then eventually the Local, where I met tons and tons of friends and just, again, kind of found who I was through all of this newness. And Flint's one of those cities. It's small enough that you can make a huge impact if you have the heart and the will and the connections. Really, money always helps, but connections supersede money. But it's small enough that you can do that. But it's still a city, and it still feels like a city. When I moved downtown for the first time, I just fell in love with taking walks downtown and seeing, like, we have a river park, a park on the river where they do a jazz festival, and they do all kinds of festivals and stuff on the river. They have an LGBTIQ plus festival down there, and it was they've refurbished all of that, but there was this huge water feature which doesn't really get running anymore, but it was gorgeous. And it was great. It was great to walk downtown and just to be in a city, but like to feel like it wasn't an overwhelming city. And I loved it, and I needed that, at 27. Well, no, let me think. When I moved to Flint in my early 30s. So my early, well, but still, getting to know the city in my 20s, though. I guess, because I was younger when I started getting to know the city. And it's great, and I know I'm missing so much, and that's what's frustrating and great too. But I wanted to kind of just introduce you, like, hey, welcome to Flint, because there's just so much here, and it's interesting. Like in doing the conventions, we brought celebrities to the city, and none of them, not one, freaked out, got worried, said anything. The only thing we ever heard on anything about the city itself was Ken Sego's that was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4 was like, oh, I wish I would have known you guys were near so much water. I would have brought my fishing pole, because he likes to fish. And we do have a lot of water, a lot of parks in Flint. Holy cow, a lot of parks. But yeah, none of them said anything, acted weird. And it's interesting that it's usually the suburban people who have either don't know the city or will just drive through and like, oh, well. They're the ones that will kind of give you grief about it because they don't know it. I mean, every city has its dark sides. Every city has its magic, much like every town has both. And it's what you want to see and what you're willing to see. And, I feel lucky that, we got to have our daughter in Flint, and that, for however long we're here, she'll get to learn about the city, and just we get to kind of share it with her. Like, I think that's exciting. And I don't know that any of you will ever care or come here for sure, but like, I just want you to know that we're alive. We're a city of strong, vibrant, resilient people who aren't looking for handouts, who are looking for kind of hand up. They're looking for those opportunities, for that chance, for someone to give them that shot. And there's a lot of greatness here, and a lot of passion. And I hope that bit by bit more people get to see all of that. So, welcome to Flint. What would you like to do? Again, my name's Chris Ringler. This is the Spooky Chris Podcast. If you want to learn about me, go to spookychris.com. Look me up on the internet, or you can check out my short films on YouTube. Just look up Chris Ringler or Grim Ringler, Spooky Chris, whatever. I hope you're well, friend. Take care. See you soon.